Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending tonight's debate. This debate is being broadcast live on your local radio station, 106.1 FM, The KWUF, and will be available online in its entirety at pagosapulse.com. Tonight's debate will be unlike the ones we've watched on television this past year, first in the primaries and most recently the presidential debates. Unlike these national-level debates, we gather tonight as neighbors. And while our politics may differ, everyone on this stage believes that they have the best ideas for governing Archuleta County, and that is why they're here. Win or lose, these candidates are vested in the future of our community, and come November 9th, they will continue to be an integral part of this place we call home. I commend all of our candidates for running to become the next county commissioner. And to all of those who are here tonight or listening in, thank you. Oftentimes, people are dismissive of local politics, but that's a mistake. While national politics take most of the bandwidth, life happens locally. Decisions made by local government touch our daily lives in so many tangible ways, it's imperative to be engaged in the political process. As an informed constituent, it's quite possible to still be undecided on your vote for county commissioner. So, ballot in hand on this Friday night in America, let's begin. My name is Nicole DeMarco, and I will be moderating this debate on behalf of KWUF Radio. Will Spears, owner and manager of KWUF Radio, is behind the scenes tonight, running the radio traffic and making sure the debate is broadcast loud and clear. Barring the unanswerable question, there will be no radio silence. Another longtime member of the KWUF team, Chris Oliveras, is on the road tonight with the Pagosa Springs football team, playing the Alamosa Mean Moose on the dark side of Wolf Creek Pass, which is broadcast each and every week on 1400 AM. And now, on to our distinguished local media panel. Christie, with her husband Will, purchased KWUF radio station in 1999. Christie does a little bit of everything at KWUF, including sales, bookkeeping, and production. Christie never dreamed of owning and operating a radio station in rural Colorado, but like so many unplanned adventures, it's worked out. Bill Hudson has been writing for and publishing the online Pagosa Daily Post since 2004, covering mainly local politics and public education. In his previous life, he was a graphic designer and theater director. He also serves on the board of the Pagosa Charter School Initiative, which will be presenting their proposal for a new public charter school this coming Monday. Diane Killen and her husband Michael have lived in Pagosa for 12 years. Together, they own High Horse Video Productions, which produces television shows for the network RFD TV. Diane is also a freelance videographer for NBC. She introduced PagosaPulse.com in 2010 as a platform for video-oriented content about the community. And lastly, Roxanne DeMarco will be keeping time at tonight's debate. Roxanne works at First Southwest Bank as their Director of Community Partnerships. On your ballot, you are tasked to select 2 county commissioners, which is 2 of the 3 districts up for election in this staggered system. Archuleta County citizens are allowed to vote for 1 candidate from each district, regardless of their home address. This debate will be broken into 2 segments, with District 1 answering first, while District 2 waits outside to avoid the unfair advantage of hearing questions in advance. The questions for District 1 and 2 are identical and will be asked in the same order. We have 6 questions prepared tonight. Each question will have no more than 20 minutes of debate, and each district will debate no longer than 60 minutes. Each district will begin with opening remarks limited to 2 minutes, and at the end of each debate, candidates will have 2 minutes to make their closing statements. The panelists will each have 1 minute to pose a question to the candidates. Questions have been prepared in advance, and there will be no questions from the audience. Once each candidate has had the opportunity to give their 2-minute response, the floor will be open for debate. When the candidate wishes to rebuttal, he or she will signify by raising their hand, at which point I will acknowledge the candidate's desire to speak. When it's their turn to speak next, they will have the microphone for no more than 2 minutes. I will interject at 15 seconds remaining and at 2 minutes to ensure all candidates have the opportunity to speak. I will also attempt to keep responses focused to the question at hand. In the absence of rebuttal, the debate is dead and our panelists will pose the next question. Out of respect for the candidates and our camera crew, please do not stand up during the debate. And this is a good reminder to silence your phones, So this will be a formal debate. There shall be no outbursts from candidates or audience members. Tonight is not about personalities or the past. This is about policy and best ideas for the future of Archuleta County. So if District 2 could leave the room now. Thank you. We will begin with District 1, which is represented by all 3 candidates tonight. To my right, Mr. Morgan Murri, Mr. Rod Proffit, and Mr. Steve Wadley. Mr. Murri, please begin with your opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So excited to see the turnout here tonight, here in the audience, and those of you listening at home and those that will watch this video in the future, thank you. Very excited to share with you tonight further ideas about our community. I would also like to extend a handout, a reach out to Ronnie Mays, whose father passed away recently and he can't attend tonight. And also in this public forum, in the spirit of Nicole's opening, I would like to extend a personal thank you to Steve Wadley for his service in our community. And Steve, despite what it might feel like in the media, sometimes I respect the service and admire what you've done in the community in the last 6 years of service. And I know you've worked hard to get us here. But I also feel like it's time for change and a time to move forward. Coming here tonight or traveling around any part of our community, it's very easy to see that Pagosa is growing. Far too much for some people, but that growth is happening. People want to be here in this community, and we're not going to be able to stop that. And I think we need the leadership and new people and new ideas and fresh perspectives to help guide us and navigate this county into the future. The commissioner that you select for this seat is going to guide us into 2020. Things are going to happen and things are going to change. Our affordable housing crisis, our desperate need for childcare, our urgent need for more bandwidth and better internet technology, and certainly a focus on our deteriorating roads, those challenges are only going to get bigger. And I think we need people with a strong background and new ideas and a fresh perspective to address how to do that. I hope that as you've gotten to know me over the last 10 years, for those of you that have been here that long, or even recently just out campaigning and knocking on your door, that you have the confidence in me to help me be the person that helps guide us into that future. Thank you, and thank you for coming out tonight.
Hi, my name's Rod Proffit. I join with Morgan in expressing my sympathies to Ronnie and his family. This has been a long campaign, and I really appreciate the fact that KWUF and so many others joined to put this on tonight. It's a chance for all of us to express our views on the issues that are facing the county. The way this was posed to us was this was about the future, and I think that's exactly what we need to be looking at. My campaign slogan is moving forward, and I think we are now past the Great Recession. We need to start looking at what our future is going to bring for us. And as the saying goes, those who don't plan for the future fail to plan. So I think that this is a great time in our history to be doing that we aren't into a boom, as it were, but we can see that a boom might be coming, and we need to gauge exactly where that's going and how that's going to work for the best interests of this community. Thank you.
I think we all, everyone here, our hearts go out to Ronnie Mays, and what a difficult time him and his family are going through. These political races are difficult on the candidates, we all three know, and they're very difficult on the family, and I think it's doubly hard for Ronnie to be juggling all these at the same time. I am in a unique position here as I've held office since 2011. So the best way I think to judge a person's future performance is to judge my past performance. And I'm proud of what I've done in Archuleta County. It hasn't always been right, and I'm sure I've made some decisions that some of you disagree with. And I promise you that there's not one commissioner that everybody agrees with all the time. But you have to look at what we inherited and where we are at now. When I took office, we'd just come out of the worst recession in a generation. Property tax was down 30%. The sales tax had dropped another 20%. We went from 166 employees to 147, over a 10% drop of employees. And you know, those are just numbers, but when you have to look at that and realize that you're going to really impact somebody's life, their ability to have health insurance, their ability to provide for their family, maybe even their ability to live and stay in Pagosa Springs, those are decisions that we took very strong. They were heartfelt decisions. But we had to make them. We're the ones in charge of the budget. So in that time, we've also managed to save. We've doubled our reserves. We've provided a much better, higher level of efficiency in county government. And yeah, the times are getting better now, and I think largely to some of the decisions the Board of County Commissioners made. We now have a Walmart that's doing over $3 million worth of business a month. Calculate how much sales tax that's bringing into their coffers. How many people aren't having to travel 120 miles to buy a pair of tennis shoes? I'm proud of the job I've done, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it tonight.
Thank you, candidates. And now on to the panel. We'll start with Diane.
Thank you, Nicole. And thank you, gentlemen, for being here tonight. I'm going to start with something simple and easy. Let's talk about roads. Commissioners are fond of saying that the people don't wish to have any tax increases, and since that's what it would take to have better roads, then they won't get the roads they want. People always want to get to heaven, but they don't want to die to get there. But in reality, good roads are not just what binds us together as a community, they also serve to show those wishing to move here that this is a progressive and secure place to live. Nothing says prosperity like a good road. At last estimate, almost half of our county roads were in critical to poor condition. My question is this: what specifically would you propose to do to improve our road maintenance, and how would you propose to pay for it? And if you are in favor of more metro districts, wouldn't this just add more layers of government? From where, how would you create new revenue, and from where would you reallocate existing resources?
Mr. Murri, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Thank you, and thanks for the question. Obviously, this is near and dear to all of our hearts and something I've focused a lot on in this campaign, understanding it. The first thing that I would propose is that all of our issues tie together. I think everybody will understand and resonate with the fact that one of the biggest challenges we have in our Road and Bridge Department is affordable housing. The director of the Road and Bridge Department struggles to find a place to live. His drivers leave often because they can't afford to live here. Affordable housing has to be addressed as part of the solution for our entire community. Specific to roads, one of the things that I would propose is looking differently at how we do our Justice Center. Mr. Wadley expressed how well the county has done and prosperously saved a lot of hard-earned money, of our tax money, of money that we've all generated off our property taxes and our sales taxes. Rather than spend $5 million of our reserve, which has been loosely proposed, I would allocate half of that $5 million, $2.5 million is the maximum to allocate towards our Justice Center project, and I would take 25% of that remaining 50%, $1.25 million, and apply that towards a thoughtful, well-planned, well-designed road improvement program. Leverage that money with the bonds, or excuse me, with grant opportunities that are available, with other monies that we can have access to, and find creative ways that we can leverage that money to focus on our roads. They're always going to be a problem here. I think none of us are willing to pay more taxes. I'm certainly not advocating for more taxes and more increases, but by getting creative, by being fiscally conservative, by focusing on a Justice Center that we can afford, by focusing on using our savings, like all of us do at home, intelligently and wisely. I left out the last 25% of that. That stays in our reserves to protect us should some unforeseen crisis come up. But let's use that money wisely to solve our jail issue and to further move forward on our road problems. Thank you.
Mr. Proffit?
Well, I agree with Morgan. You can't talk about one issue without talking about them all. They all interact. The courthouse has really overwhelmed the debate of late, and this has put roads, the perennial issue, in the background. That's unfortunate because roads affect everyone. We all use them. They impact our commerce. They impact our property values. They impact our car maintenance costs. So individual costs go up as a result of poor maintenance, and also most of our roads don't have shoulders. And since I found myself in the ditch several times over a winter, first winter I was here, where I didn't know where the sides of the roads were, I can tell you that it ups the cost just on car repairs for accidents that occur. So it's a perennial issue we have to address, and we have to, if you can't do it with the slices of the pie you've got to enlarge the pie somehow. And that depends on what the taxpayers are willing to vote themselves to do. And with the courthouse out there, it's a competition that the taxpayers are going to have a difficult time assessing on their priorities to get this done. But I've proposed a 10% increase in the road maintenance budget. That'd be about $700,000 a year, and I would take that from other areas and utilize that in the road maintenance to give priority to it. I think the county commissioners did a good job putting a road maintenance plan together. That's 5 years old though, and we've got to update it. So that's our first step.
And now, Mr. Wadley?
The road maintenance plan, the 5-year plan, is updated annually. We have 320 miles of road in Archuleta County and far too little money to maintain it. What we have done, what the Board of County Commissioners has done, is we only get so much of your tax dollars, but we allocate how it's spent. And it used to be the general government got 80% of the mill levy. Road and Bridge Department got 15%, and Human Services gets 5%, which is the least we can give them by law. So what we did do 2 years ago is we increased the amount of road and bridge money by decreasing the amount of money going to the general government. We increased that from 15 to 25%, which gave them a lot more money. The other thing that we're able to do now is for a long time, we have put off buying expensive road and bridge equipment. Many of these motor graders, the other heavy truck equipment, you're looking at $250,000 per piece of equipment. So we haven't been operating the most efficient equipment. We're now able in a position to start replacing some of that equipment and work more efficiently. It's always a question of robbing Peter to pay Paul. There's never enough money to do it all. But the best thing to do is to have a plan that takes the politics out of it, so one neighborhood doesn't get the lion's share of road maintenance, and we attack the critical issues. One of the things that I'm proud of is that we were able to do over 3 miles of Piedra Road. It was a $3.5 million project, and the county only paid 17% of that. We were successful in obtaining grants for the rest of that. And that wouldn't be done if we weren't able to work with the Forest Service, the neighboring counties, and everybody else to work together to help us with the grant, including the town. So that's what we've done. And again, it's easy to say what you could do, but I've been charged with doing it, and I think we did a good job.
May I? And I agree, but I think we can do a better job. And I think, as Mr. Wadley pointed out, it is about an allocation of resources, and it is about wise spending, and it is about finding the right equipment and buying those pieces of equipment that are most effective. But I think the thing that I said that was different than the other two gentlemen here is that we have that money in reserves. The county commissioners didn't save that money. We saved that money. Our community generated that money. They didn't spend it. Thank you for that. But now, because we have excess savings, let's allocate some of that money, as Mr. Wadley said, and I give them great credit for what they did with the first half of Piedra Road, and I know they're working hard on the second half, but that grant money takes leverage money to get it. So let's leverage part of our assets, let's leverage part of our reserves responsibly to further develop that road program. So it isn't just about robbing Peter to pay Paul, it's about using the money that we've saved, leveraging that as creatively as we can with the resources that we have to do more than 3 miles of Piedra Road, to finish the other part, and then address the next most important road. The other thing that I would propose that I've talked about is communication in government. One of those things that dovetails with all of the other issues that we see in all government at all levels. I would propose that we work with the Road and Bridge Department, a Herculean task, but I believe that it can be done with good leadership, to list every road in the county, to further adapt the road and bridge plan, the maintenance plan, and let everybody in the county see where their road falls on a list. If you choose to live as far out of the town as you can, that's a choice that you make, and there are benefits to that choice. Low traffic, low people, more deer in your yard, all those great things why we live here. But you should know that somewhere on the list your road exists, and even if you're mile 350 out of 400, the communication, the feeling of that you're included and that you matter because you see that somewhere down the road, down the line, your road is going to get great is an important part of the plan that I would want to implement.
So
Thanks.
next, Mr. Proffit, just a reminder, the question did ask specifically, where would you cut revenues in your opinion on metro districts?
Right. I remember the metro districts after I got done, and that's an important question. For me, that would fragmentize the road maintenance. And and as Diane mentioned, it would add another layer of government. And so you're paying administration out of a metro district to do the very same thing that the county can do. You do have a scale of costs, and if the county is investing in road maintenance equipment, it makes really very little sense to me to have every metro district have its own equipment and be doing different things at different standards. I just don't think it would be good for the county as a whole to have that fragmentation in road maintenance out there. And you know, our problem, it's just like with the courthouse. It's been said over and over again, and I believe it's to be true, is that for every year that we wait on doing something about it, it's $1 million cost. And it's the same with our roads. The longer we wait to do something with the roads, the more it's going to cost us. And we started with a deficit in the first place. When Eaton went bankrupt, those roads were already below standards when they were built. And so we've already started with roads that just wouldn't hold up in the first place, and then we deferred the maintenance on them, so we made that even worse. So it's going to be a hard uphill climb to get this done, and we're just going to have to find the money, and that's all there is to it.
Mr. Wadley?
Yeah, I'm in favor of metro districts, and I've been a proponent of them since I took office. Right now there's 5 metro districts in Archuleta County, and the county has worked out an agreement where we rebate 90% of the highway user tax dollars that come back into Archuleta County. We give those back to those metro districts that are taking care of those roads as an incentive for them to do that. That way, smaller groups, smaller neighborhoods, Aspen Springs has their own metro district. Now Timber Ridge has their own metro districts. They can decide locally what type of roads they want and what they're willing to pay for on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis. And I think that Aspen Springs is paying 14 mils extra for their roads, but they have high quality roads, and the residents vote among themselves as to whether or not they want to pay for it. Sure, there's nothing 100% of anybody agrees with, but it is a way for local citizens to decide what kind of roads they want and how they're going to pay for them. So I am in favor of metro districts.
Okay, and just before we close this out, I would like each of you guys to answer where would that money come from, succinctly? Where would you reallocate those resources?
I'll go first. You have to make the pie bigger. I just don't see any other way to do it. We were in recession mode for the last 8-9 years, and we have not pulled out of that much. With the reserves that we have been able to build up under this past administration are just barely what we need in case we go through another recession. So we can't be borrowing from Paul to pay Peter. I mean, it's just not going to work for us. The only way I see this is give the taxpayers options and let them go for it on this. I always look at the use tax first. When I was in Crested Butte, we called that mother's milk because growth was paying its own way. It was mostly building materials, and since we didn't have a lumber yard in Crested Butte, everything was a use tax out of Gunnison or out of Montrose that brought up building materials because it was out of the county, and well, even Gunnison was out of our town. So the use tax was a major portion of our budget. And we utilized that to put in a drainage plan and redo our roads during the recession in the 80s, because we knew that if we were going to compete with other resort communities, we had to do those things. Well, we didn't do those things here in the last recession. We are not in a competitive mode. We've sat on it, we've made the cuts, but we didn't upgrade the things that we need to do to compete with other resort communities. And that's where we need to go with this thing. We need to get on a better mode with that.
Mr. Wadley?
Well, you know, it's easy to say we need a bigger slice of the pie. I couldn't agree more. We did that. We took 10% away from general government and put it in the road and bridge money. But at this point, where do you cut? Do you cut out of the sheriff's department? Do you cut out of elections where they're already struggling with new rules and regulations? Do you cut it out of the treasurer's office where they have to maintain and where every dollar goes that's invested wisely? This county government is very leaned out right now, I promise you that. The low-hanging fruit is gone. So the best way to increase the slice of the pie is, one of the things that helping us out a lot right now is Walmart. With the sales tax that we're seeing coming from Walmart that was heading into La Plata County, and now it's being spent here. We've also seen growth with the Tractor Supply store coming into town. And as long as we can get more businesses to relocate here, then it makes more money for everybody. The sales tax dollars go up, the property tax dollars go up, and there's more money to spend. But this community is not minded to pay more taxes, so we have to be as efficient as we can be, invest in the right equipment, and be business friendly, and that's what I propose, and that's what I've done.
Mr. Murri?
Thank you. The pie is getting bigger, obviously, and thankfully the economy is robust and things are happening. Our sales taxes are increasing, and therefore we have more money in our coffers. I think Rod and I are at a little bit of a disadvantage not having the experience of the commissioners in the room, but my understanding is that the way that the money is taken and put to specific reserves, some of the reserves are mandatory and some of them are not. As long as things are good, let's redirect, as Mr. Wadley said, let's redirect a larger portion of that to road and bridge and develop that fund. But I'll go back to me addressing this question clearly in the front. Let's leverage some of the money that we have to get more money that we can use immediately to do a job of getting caught up and addressing those really critical roads and issues that are such a detriment to our community and reflect so poorly on where we live. But at the same time, to say that things are great here and getting busier and we're just going to keep making more money when there's no affordable place for people to live, when, as Mr. Talon mentioned the other day on a Facebook post, standing in line at City Market and a discussion about affordable housing started, and 10 people joined the discussion saying they're leaving town in the next 30 days because there is no place for people that can fix our roads or drive on our roads or work at Walmart or work at Tractor Supply or deliver pizza. There are no places for those people to live. So part of developing that pie and part of developing the plan, and different to what's been done in the past, is we have to look forward and create a plan. And from that, we can then determine how to reallocate those sources and leverage those additional funds to improve our roads.
Thank you, candidates. And now to Bill.
Thank you. Thanks for answering these questions so thoroughly. I appreciate that. So I'm going to do a little background on this question, and the question is not going to be what you think when you hear the background. So just pay
We so
pay
wouldn't
close
expect
attention.
that from you.
Yes. So in May of 2015, the BOCC gathered a committee of prominent citizens to give input on the proposed courthouse expansion. And during the second meeting of that committee, a number of the committee members asked the county staff for clarification of the total budget that the county had available for the projected expansion. The staff at that meeting responded that the committee's charge was not related to the cost of the expansion, but only to the location of the new facility. After that second meeting, the committee was disbanded and was not allowed to give any further input. A year later, the cost of a new Justice Center on Hot Springs Boulevard was estimated by the BOCC's consultants at approximately $28 million. A few months later, Commissioner Whiting made the claim that even if the county used most of its unassigned savings and maxed out the county's legally allowed debt limit, the maximum funding available would be about $16 million. Please share your sense of the proper role of appointed citizens committees when a BOCC is proposing to max out the county's debt limits and spend most of its available savings on a new county facility.
Mr. Proffit, we'll start with you.
Well, Bill, you were exactly right. That's not the question that I would have expected from that background. I was talking to some people just today about that committee that was put together to talk about the courthouse and how they thought their mission was going to be all facets of the courthouse. And it turned out that they had been limited to a location only and then disbanded after that. But it seems to me that you put a planning commission together for planning, and the planning mode of operation should go through the planning commission. That's what their mission is, to advise the Board of County Commissioners. I thought it was a lot of wasted time on a top-down effort to figure out where the location was, and it narrowed things way too much in the discussion. It left a lot of the public out, and it's regrettable. I had mentioned that it's costing us $1 million a year for the delays in this. I took a tour through the jail about a month ago, and I think we all have at one point or another, all the candidates, but it's distressing to go through that. Rich is in a incredibly bad position. It's a no-win for Rich in how he operates that jail at this point. And somebody's going to get hurt. Things are going to, I mean, the chance of something going wrong is astronomical. Going back and forth to Durango alone. When I was in Red Lodge, they closed the county jail, and we had to take prisoners to Billings. And that increased our number of city policemen simply because we had to have somebody covering the town while another guy was going to Billings.
Mr. Wadley?
Well, I want to say this about, the cost has been bandied about. All the BOC did was select, BOCC, I'm sorry, I forgot to see. All we did was select a location. It was a piece of property that the county owns. There was a deed restriction on it. And that, in principle, has already been dealt with. The final signatures haven't been gotten, but I'm very secure that they will be. So the deed restriction will be lifted. We're going to have to go back to the designers and have them design something that we can afford. And if it has to be built in stages with the jail first, then that's how it has to be done. But to keep kicking this can down the curb like it's been done time and time again, this isn't the first time this community's dealt with this issue. And again, then all of a sudden a crisis comes and we can't afford it. If for those of you who haven't taken a tour of the jail, you should take it and see if you think we should invest another dollar in it. I don't. I think it's good money after bad, and it's time for us to show some leadership, to make a decision, and to start finding a way to build something that we can afford. We don't need the dome ceilings or the marble hallways that they have in Denver. We don't need the teak benches. This is Archuleta County. Our current courthouse ranks 64 out of 64. And I think it makes us in a very good position for grants. And we're in the process of seeking those. We're looking for every dollar. At least we have some money to leverage because we saved some money.
Mr. Murri, and just a reminder, the question is...
I got it.
Okay.
I got it. Thank you. Not to interrupt, but I think your question has nothing to do about the courthouse or the price. I think your question was clearly, what's the role of a appointed citizen body in addressing our county issues? And as somebody that sits on many of those committees, currently on the Housing Authority Committee, I think it's one of the beauties and the fatal flaws of our current government. In small communities, we all have to pitch in, and those of us that are fortunate enough to have the time have to pitch in the most. And one of the great benefits of this community is how many people are willing to give their time to charities, to projects, to crises, and focus on those issues. And we have smart, wonderfully intelligent people in this community. They care so much. And when our government requests their time that they give freely and voluntarily and leans on them for an opinion and then disregards that opinion or pays no attention to that opinion, it's insulting. If we're going to use our citizen body, which I am completely a fan of, so many of you I know from those situations in those meetings. And so many of you care and show up and participate for years and years and years working on projects. We have to if we're going to do that, and I advocate that we do, we have to listen to that body. We have to take people that work with Sheriff Valdez that want to participate or that have been in that jail, or people from different departments. And when they give us a recommendation, we need to follow it. And that needs to be part of the process. To request of our citizens that work and disregard it does only one thing: ensures that people are not going to line up and help us the next time. So I'll get to all of my issues if we want to, about the price and location, all of those mistakes. But the mistake here clearly was to assemble a group that you don't care about their opinion, and then to disregard the input of that group.
Mr. Proffit?
Yeah, in 2007, when we had a very dysfunctional Board of County Commissioners, the one thing that they actually did right was create a financial advisory committee. And it was a blue ribbon panel, really good people, really wanting to devote their time and their talents to solving the problems. And we probably would have gone down the tubes, but for that financial advisory committee. They made good, hard decisions, and fortunately, the Board of County Commissioners followed those decisions. I wound up moving a whole department in January from uptown to downtown based on one of their decisions, and that was that we couldn't afford the rent where we were, and so they moved us into county locations so that we didn't have any overhead anymore. And that was a really tough decision, but it saved the county big bucks in doing it. And the county offices for planning are still out there on the highway as a result of that. And I agree with Morgan. If you put people in the right position to do things, you've got to follow what they're leading you to. And that wasn't done in this case, and that cost us time, energy, and really some credibility for the Board of County Commissioners in how they follow this decision. But I'll go back to the Planning Commission. If that advisory committee had been attached to the Planning Commission, I think it would have been much better than attaching it to the Board of County Commissioners. But well, I wasn't there, so I can't say. That's speculation on my part.
Mr. Wadley?
We had numerous, every Tuesday morning at 8:30 or at 9:30, depending on what our meeting schedule was. The courthouse was at the top of the list of what we were going to discuss. We took time to take input on numerous worksheets or work sessions where people came in and put up different scenarios at different locations, what would work and what wouldn't work, where we could consider one property or the other. I can't begin to count how many work sessions there were, but I would absolutely guarantee you there were over 60 work sessions where all three commissioners were there listening to every idea that everybody had. So to say that this was done in a vacuum is not true. We listened to everybody, and everybody had time to speak.
Mr. Murri?
I would just reiterate what I've said openly to my friends and people that I've talked to, and what I've said in my advertising. I hear you. I hear you. And the question, and it's not about work sessions. The question wasn't about a work session. The question was about citizen involvement in ad hoc groups to give insight as a collective group, not at a meeting that's difficult to attend, but as a collective body of citizens to weigh in and, if asked, use the expertise. I'm a fairly smart guy. There's a lot of you out there that are way smarter than I am, and I want that input, and I want to solicit that from our community. And one of the most wonderful assets we have in this community is the brain power of our people, and I strongly support us using that in an effective way.
Okay. Now on to Christie.
I want to thank Steve, Rod, and Morgan for being here. And this is my question. There are countless stories of people losing their rental and not being able to find a place to live. As the help wanted section gets longer, the rental section gets shorter, and those who can't find adequate shelter are forced to leave our community. In the free market system, there are greater financial gains in selling expensive housing and flipping short-term rentals than in building affordable housing and leasing long-term rental units. Therefore, what is the role of county government in dealing with the affordable housing shortage?
Can I start
Mr.
with-
Wadley?
Yeah, the government does have a big role in this. And first of all, we need to look at any regulations we have that are impediments, that are roadblocks to it. One of the things that often comes up is the cost of having to put in sewer systems where it doesn't hook up to a main sewer system, where they have to do an engineered septic system. Just a few days ago, we were meeting with San Juan Basin Board of Health to see if we could find some way of maybe coming up with an off-the-shelf way to have these engineered so that people aren't having to pay, one, to have engineered, spend $5,000 looking at a system, and then the health department charging $1,000 to inspect it. There's a lot of bureaucracy, and it's not as easy as it sounds to solve it. But we do need to, one of the other things that I think that we can do, and this is much more really to the town than the county because our codes are more relaxed, is to look at having more high-density housing, to look at lots that are zoned for single families and allowing duplexes or fourplexes to be built on them. We need to find some way of working with PAWS to see if the infrastructure costs can be prorated and put off. They have, they have their slice of the pie and they have to pay their bills too, and it's always easy to give away somebody else's money. And this problem came upon us very quickly. It wasn't but about 2 years ago that an expensive house was rented for $500 or $800 a month because nobody could sell it. It has flipped, and there is a terrible shortage of housing in our community. And we are exploring many ways to try and solve this problem. Our eyes are open. It came upon us, but we are trying to relax any regulation or look at fee schedules, look at anything we can do to create housing faster. It is a big problem in our community. I appreciate it and I recognize it.
Mr. Murri?
Thank you. I think this is the issue. We talk a lot about the courthouse, but this is the issue for our future. And Bill, I have to give you tremendous credit for your work on the Housing Authority and other people that have done that. I came to it late, but I so admire the work that you've done. I think it's a shining example of exactly what your question before posed, using the brain power in our community to address those problems. Christie, to answer your question, what's government's role? I think government's role is to be less bureaucratic and reduce the barriers to entry in key components of our communities and our marketplace. The reason nobody's building affordable housing here is because they can't afford it, which is such a great oxymoron, right? We can't afford affordable housing. You can't, as a builder, you can't afford to make it. And what can we do to change that? Ideas about land that we can donate, excess of land or land that's maybe not prime land, such as the sewer lagoons that are going away now that we have a different sewer processing system, the excessive land around the high school that may be available. So the government's role can be to be very creative in how we reduce the barriers to entry so that we can stimulate and incentivize through lack of those barriers for someone to actually want to build affordable housing. I proposed for a for-profit program a tiny house project that someone in the community came to me and said, hey, I've got a piece of dirt that I can't do anything with and we've got this housing crisis, what would you do? And we came up with a super cool tiny house project. Cool enough that it was submitted on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce and the CDC to the governor's office in a request for using tiny houses as a solution to mountain housing crises. And we were selected, our project was selected as one of 3 in the state. And the governor's office is coming here on Halloween to talk to us about it. Another way that we can work together with citizen groups and the government bodies to address this issue.
Mr. Proffit?
I sat in on the housing attainment group, but not as often as I would have liked. Bill was much more present in that, and Peter Adams was wonderful because he sat on the Town Planning Commission and also the County Planning Commission. And Steve must have read the report that came out of that, because density is a key component to us being able to meet those demands, get costs down on the land so that builders can afford to put up affordable housing and workforce housing. Those are the two components that we really need. There's also a need for emergency housing. But the report addresses all of those, but workforce housing, as Morgan had mentioned previously, that is paramount. I talked to Rich. He can't even get sheriff's deputies simply because the housing is just not available for him to entice people to come here. He had one guy actually get hired and then have to leave because he couldn't bring his family in, couldn't find the housing for him. That's just unacceptable. We've got to address this. The report is done. It's whether government has the political will to follow the recommendations and get that done. There was some discussion of POPOA. POPOA does have some multifamily lots that are available, but they're finite. POPOA is only built out halfway, and so there's still a lot of supply for single-family homes, and Habitat has made use of some of that stock of raw land that's out there to build Habitat homes. So anytime that you can get supply up, and then you can start meeting demand, and that's where we need to get, and that starts with the zoning and the density levels that we have. And that begins in town where you have existing infrastructure, that you don't have those costs. If you develop into green fields,
Thank you, Mr.
you're only
Proffit.
expending it.
And now, Mr. Wadley?
Again, you know, we've got to see where government can get out of the way on costs. Fourplexes, for example, the town requires that there be sidewalks. And I don't know if you've priced concrete lately, but concrete is very expensive in this area. And a lot of it is because the gravel that's nearby doesn't spec out, so the gravel has to be brought in. So concrete's expensive, so driveways, sidewalks, all those things are very expensive. We've got to look at regulations, and the town and the county are working together on this. This isn't something that's been put on the back burner. This is one of our 4 priorities that we're working together on, where we're trying to find solutions. And I think the town is open to it. I know the county is. You know, if we have to look at, you know, waiving building fees or whatever we have to do, we're willing to look at anything. This is a crisis in our community. And the big problem is the impact fees add to the price of building, you know, and a lot of the lots that are available, some of them have a lot of rock, so blasting rock to get able to access to a sewer is expensive. There's just a lot of things that are in the way, but we've got to find a way to get over that hill. And we've got to find a way to solve these problems, and we are working towards them.
Okay, thank you, candidates. Now back to our panel and Christie for the next question.
At both Seeds of Learning and Head Start, there is a year-plus waiting list to enroll children in their school. This lack of early childhood education is another inhibiting factor for young families wanting to relocate and thrive in Pagosa Springs. There was subcommittees formed by the county to address this shortage. What will you do to help grow early child care education in Archuleta County? What are the 2 ideas for addressing the early child care shortage?
We'll start with Morgan.
Great. Thank you. So dovetails into affordable housing, doesn't it? And wow. So only because it ties together, but I think one of the things that goes back to housing, back to the tiny house project and other things that the Housing Authority has recommended, and one of the things that government can absolutely weigh in on is requiring that to get any of these incentives or cost reductions or lowering these barriers to entry, projects have to include a facility for childcare. Because there's 2 obvious problems. One is where do you care for the kids, and the other one is who cares for the kids. So my first answer would be work on places and locations that childcare can be provided. The second thing that government can do, and if there's one place that I believe government should spend money, would be to help more people in this community become licensed daycare providers. Most of the barrier when you talk to these people that do this professionally are far more expert than I. The biggest single barrier is the time and the money that it costs for the people to get the training they need to provide childcare. So 2 simple solutions is to include locations that we can do that in future developments or existing places that can be repurposed, and then provide money and incentives for people that want to provide daycare and want to have this as a calling and a phenomenally important, worthwhile job in all communities, but here included, to be able to have the expert training so they can be a licensed daycare provider.
Mr. Proffit?
About a year ago, PLPOA started receiving indications that there were a lot of informal daycare centers going in PLPOA, and we got some input that we should maybe license those facilities in order to know where they were and who was there and those kinds of things. And after some discussion, we decided just to stay out of that entirely and not try to get into the regulation of these sites, mainly because they were so needed that we would only impair their ability to operate, and we didn't want to do that. So the board backed away from taking any kind of action on that, even though there were some parking problems, and we just addressed the parking problems instead of going after the facilities in and of themselves. And I think at the last forum that we had on this, I thought that we could do the training right here in town through a training program of our own, which would not be very expensive. And DOLA, which is Department of Local Affairs, does have grant opportunities to do that kind of training. So I think, taking something from Morgan here, that we could jump on this pretty quickly to address the immediate need. But the long-term need is still there. We need more facilities like Seeds of Learning that are formalized, that are much higher grade than just a daycare. The education component is missing from daycare. And that's a great, as Head Start has proven, get your kids in learning mode early, and they do much better in school. So we need to address that for our community.
Mr. Wadley?
And I think these gentlemen have touched on it to some degree, but we need to recognize the difference between daycare and early childhood education. And there is a difference. And those children that receive early childhood education are so much more prepared when they attend kindergarten, and they're already caught up. They're not behind. They're not starting first and second grade behind already. So early childhood education is very important to our community, and Seeds of Learning is a phenomenal organization. The county does award a little less than $50,000 a year in grants that meet our four primary objectives that we have for the community. And early childhood education is one of them. Just Tuesday, we awarded grants to Seeds of Learning and to the Lutheran School, and I believe Head Start also. But it's a small amount of money, and it's not enough to sustain them. It's a drop in the bucket. What we also have to recognize is that those of us that don't have children in that age group, that this impacts us. That if the doctor moving here cannot find good quality daycare for their children, they're not going to move here. If the people working in our stores and our restaurants, if they don't have early childhood education, they can't move here. So now we've got a problem. There's no place to live, and there's no place to a safe learning facility for their children to attend. So these are government issues. It's not, it's not roads, it's not our problem. It is our problem. It adds to the livability of this community. And I promise you, not only the county, but the town leaders recognize this, and we're working towards it. One of the things that all of us can do is write a check to Seeds of Learning or another early childhood education. Make them one of the beneficiaries of what you give money to. It's important to all of us.
May I?
Yep, and just go ahead.
Comment?
Mm-hmm. Mr. Murri?
Thanks. And I think, not to take from a wonderful saying, but I have a dream of a beautiful community where we thrive enough that one of the best answers to that question is if a parent or a couple or two parents is successful enough that they can stay home with their child. And I think that's something to aspire to. It's not for everybody. It's certainly a grand vision, but I like to think big, and I like to think that we can rise above where we are today. And I would encourage us to shoot for that. Think about if the jobs were such here and the technology existed to create high-paying jobs here, that if a mom or a dad, I won't discriminate, I'm a dad, wanted to be able to stay home part-time with their child and raise their child at home and instill those values in their child that you can only get from your parent when you're small. Absolutely, and I agree with Mr. Wadley, child education is critically important, but so much of that can come from home. And I commend Seeds and the other facilities in our community that do such a wonderful job for our kids. But I want us to think bigger, and I want us to grow to the point, not grow in size, but grow in prosperity to the point that we can have a community where that can be one of the choices and one of the solutions for childcare.
Mr. Wadley?
I think that's an issue Morgan and I agree on, and I do. I would love to see that, and I think we'd all like to see that, and the best guidance for children come from family, and. I grew up in the age when John Kennedy was shot and we got sent home from school. My mom was home to receive me. That's not the case anymore. Wally and Beaver aren't playing in the front yard after 3 o'clock every day. It's a different place now. So we do need to strive for those good things in our community, and we do not need to limit ourselves by, that we can only have this or have that. I think we do need to dream big, and we do need to have vision, and we do need to have good ideas, and then we need to put thoughtful resolution behind them. And I agree with Morgan on that.
Mr. Proffit?
Well, we agree also. Hey, I agree. There is a need for daycare, and there is a need for early learning as well. And we've got to find a way to pay for it, and that goes back to minimum wage. I mean, all these issues kind of dovetail into one another, but we've got to find ways that these people can then turn around and pay for the daycare that they are receiving. And that's going to require some additional work on this. The one thing I would say is these groups that have been meeting on broadband, on child care, on affordable housing, I've seen other communities where you can't just let groups hang around out there. You've got to give them a mission, give them a time frame to come back, and put the product that you're looking for right there in front of them so that they know what they've got to come back to you with. And we haven't done that with the groups we've got out there, and I know in the affordable housing group we struggled with that. Okay, what are we doing here? We were all over the place, and we found our own way, and I'm not sure that all the other groups that are working on the other issues found their own way. I think we need to go back and look at these local people-driven groups and reformulate how those work so that we can get the recommendations from those groups that we need so that we can take action.
Okay, thank you, candidates. And now back to the media panel. This will be the final question of District 1. Bill?
Okay. Come on. There is a nearly unanimous outcry from Archuleta County residents that roads should be a top priority for our Board of County Commissioners. The county and our local construction industry currently spend a significant premium on gravel by having to import it from outside the county lines. However, this summer, the county denied the Two Rivers gravel pit, a mining operation that would reportedly have supplied all of the high-level gravel we needed for the next 25 years at a more attractive price than what we are now paying. This permit was denied unanimously by the commissioners at a public meeting attended primarily by homeowners who would have been affected by the gravel trucks. What is the proper role of the BOCC to ensure that high-quality gravel is available to our county government and local contractors? And what would you personally do to ensure that availability?
Mr. Proffit, we'll start with you.
I don't know if you saw Chris Chavez's ad in the paper And I talked to him on the phone as well. He is not just a proponent of better gravel and that the gravel is out there, but he went out and proved it 20 years ago that the gravel is there, that if you just go out and look for it, you can find it. And he put an ad in the paper that listed all of the sources that he found out there for gravel. I thought it was wonderful. The reason that the gravel pit was not approved, I thought, was done on a sound basis. That the trucks were just going to ruin that road, and so it was just not worth the effort to try to do it. It was just too far out of town on the wrong road, and I thought the Board of County Commissioners made the right decision. But then you got to turn around and say, well, we do need gravel. We got to go out there and find it, and we've just got to do that. Chris Chavez made a good case to me that we're using the wrong kind of gravel, that it's actually not beneficial to our roads, the type of gravel that we're using. And he told me, you come down here and I will show you. And I'm, okay. I thought it was a great pitch and worth my time and effort to do it. If I get elected, Chris will be the first guy I contact. Yeah, we need gravel. It's one of the key ingredients to keep our roads up. The maintenance costs go down if you can keep gravel on your road. So I'm all in favor of it. Mr.
Wadley?
You know, everybody says things are dirt cheap until you pay for dirt, and I promise it's pretty expensive. The vote to deny the gravel pit is one of the easiest votes I've made in my 10 years of county commissioner. That gravel pit would have ruined Meadows, South Pagosa, and Trujillo Road in a matter of weeks, if not months. Those trucks weigh 10 tons. Those roads are not designed for it. The asphalt on that would break up very, very quickly. It costs $1 million a mile. Believe it or not, it's $1 million a mile to pave a road. I'm astonished by that cost, but that's what it costs. Piedra was over $3 million to do 3.5 miles. So if we would have granted that gravel pit, they were going to give us $50,000 a year in impact fees. So you can imagine how quickly we would have been in the hole. There are gravel. I'm sure also that there's probably gravel supplies out there, but what's the role of the BOCC in that? In all honesty, that's the role of private enterprise, to find a gravel pit that's near a location that will sustain the builders and create the jobs. We can't. It's almost like saying that the BOCC is responsible for where they put a 7-Eleven. If there's gravel pits out there that are on gravel roads that make sense, I'm absolutely sure we'd approve them, but I have no qualms about denying that gravel pit. It was the smartest decision we've ever made.
Mr. Murri?
Thanks, Bill. I like your questions because you have to listen. And what would I do? I would listen to our experts. I'm not an expert in gravel or roads, but we have one, Bob Perry, and I talked to Bob about that. And Bob had a great suggestion that I didn't know existed. There are other existing gravel pits in the region. The Forest Service uses several of them. And through cooperation, like we've done with the Forest Service on Piedra Road, and working with private enterprise and other governmental bodies to create shared agreements that we can access that gravel. Other thing that I didn't know about gravel that I learned from Mr. Perry was the cost isn't so much the gravel, the cost is hauling it. So one of the flaws, in addition to the damage to the road of the previous gravel pit proposition, was that you still had to go all the way down that road and all the way back to any project. So what Mr. Perry suggested, and I also had the pleasure of speaking to Mr. Chavez, who's really a character.
He is.
Holy cow. We tried to meet in a parking lot, which was really weird because he's an old guy and he doesn't have a cell phone, and we were trying to figure out, and he didn't remember what time his appointment was, but we're going to get together. But what he suggested is that locate those gravel pits where most of the work needs to be done. We should have a gravel pit in Arbalise, and we should have a gravel pit in the Piedra area, and we should have a gravel pit towards the landfill, work to find solutions in those areas so that it does so many things. It saves us money. It reduces the impact because the gravel pit would be smaller. It reduces the wear and tear on the roads because the trucks aren't going up and down one singular road to access the gravel. And it reduces the cost on the equipment in the county and to the cost of gravel because it's more affordable, because it's more obtainable. So I think listening to our experts, be them citizens in our community in certain projects or the people that we pay on our staff, and then using what we hear and taking that advice and applying that advice to effectively use our resources in the county.
Thank you, Morgan. Okay. Thank you, the candidates and the panel. And now I will open it up. Each candidate can give a 2-minute closing remark if they so choose. We'll start with, would anyone like to start?
I'll start.
Mr. Murri?
Thank you. Thank you all for attending, and for those watching and for those listening. Truly, I said it in the beginning, but it means so much to see so many people that care. I believe about looking to the future. I hope that the ideas and the comments and the thoughtful thinking that I think is thoughtful thinking that I've shared with you tonight is appreciated and gives you insight into who I am as a person. There are so many wonderful people that I've met in this community in my 10 years here and all the work that I've done in business and the community and all those things. And you're wonderful people, and I so love my stake in the ground here. And for those of you that don't know me so well and have only seen recently what you've seen in the paper or what you've heard on the radio, but most importantly in these engagements where you get to understand me as a person and as a man, I'm about listening to this community. To me, each and every one of you matter. This community matters, and I hope that that is instilled in you the confidence that I have in myself to be the person that leads us and navigates us for the next 4 years into the future of where Pagosa Springs is heading. And focus on those key issues. Focus on what we've talked about tonight. And not just talk about what we've done, and not just talk about that it could happen, but let's shape it and make it happen. And I believe I'm well equipped to do that, and I hope you do too. So I'm asking for your vote, and if you're really excited about it, you can take a sign there over by the door. And just thanks so much for your support, and thank you most of all for all of you, for Steve and for Rod, and our panel. Thank you for really great questions that really made us think and share our thoughts for this community. Nicole, I'm so proud to be a part of this community and so proud to be able to be up here and share my views. So thank you very much.
Mr. Proffit?
Well, thanks to everyone. I really appreciate this. Steve expressed that he was afraid that we might digress toward the end of this, and I don't think we did. And certainly Steve held up his end on keeping this on track, and I thought really all of us provided you with some guidance on where we are and where we'd like to take you as leaders of this community. And that's the best we can do, and I think you've got some choices to make. I think all of these guys are willing, they're community-oriented, and I just think that I'm probably the better of the group. Anyway, I don't care who you vote for. The first thing is go out and vote. You know, you're part of this community. This is important for our future, and I certainly hope that you will vote and vote for me. Thank you.
Mr. Wadley?
You know, I think the one thing that I share with these other gentlemen is that you're looking at three men that have put their heart and soul in this community. We've all volunteered our time to a great degree to various causes. I'm in a different position in that I've held a job for almost 6 years. So you can look at what I've done, and if you feel like I've done a good job for you, then return me to my seat. If you feel like one of these other guys to do a better job, then do that. But, you know, the one thing I've always said is this job belongs to the public. It doesn't belong to me. You guys decide who holds the chair. And I I believe that I've maintained myself with dignity and that I've done the best for Archuleta County, and I promise you I'll continue to do that. You may disagree with me from time to time, but I promise you my heart's always in the right place, and I walk out of there with a clean heart and a clear head that I've done the very best for you, and I will continue to do that if it's your pleasure to return me for another 4 years. I very much appreciate your attendance and your listening and this community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidates. We will take a quick break while District 2 takes their chair.
Thank you, everybody.